Meaningful partnerships between parents and educators can truly prepare our children for success. Welcome to Conversations with the Education Enthusiast, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to be your child's best advocate. Now, here's your host, Dr. Balon Joseph.
Today I have a very special guest, Mrs. Dulaney. Thank you so much for taking the time and the long drive to come and be on my show today. I truly appreciate you and your family for letting us borrow you for a little while. I've had the privilege of working alongside Teresa, it's been almost 8 years ago now, in a small private school in Raleigh, Florida. So first off, I did not know that there was a Raleigh, Florida. I think most people did not know that.
I'm sure they still don't know it.
But there is a Raleigh, Florida, and there was this awesome, still is, an awesome private school there that I had the chance to teach at. And Teresa also taught there, and her husband was the principal of the school. And this school, I believe, was such a gem because it took on children who typically would probably have not been successful in other settings for a variety of reasons, but they were able to blossom and shine here just because of the culture and the love and the faith that was just created for them to prosper and thrive. So I was very, very blessed and honored to be a part of this setting. And Teresa was over the elementary teachers, and she was the kindergarten teacher, and she was my daughter's elementary or kindergarten teacher. So again, I'm just really excited that we're coming full circle, where we get a chance to talk about your new book, How to Train a Superhero, A Story of Autism. And we'll definitely get more into the book in a second, but I did want to make sure I did introduce you from my perspective. But can you share a little bit about us for the people who are listening?
Well, we did first meet at Vision Christian Academy, and we both taught there. And at that point, I was around 48 and had gone back to school and finished my teaching degree. When the children were younger and we started learning about their disabilities and stuff, I was actually in my junior year of elementary ed. And when all that started, then I had to put all that on the back burner because my priority was them. And so I never dreamed in a million years I'd go back to school at 48, because that is not what I wanted to do. I can promise you.
Wow.
But I did go back and finish with a degree in elementary ed and special ed. And so I tell everybody I got the life degree before I got the piece of paper.
There you go.
Because of raising the boys and all that we went through with them. So now I'm not teaching anymore. I'm back to kind of teaching my older son Jack how to kind of advocate through his adult lifehood. So we're actually been doing a business together, and I'm still wanting to teach Tommy a lot more because he's kind of off the chain right now with all his grandiose ideas, and I have to somehow catch up with him.
Oh my goodness.
And then my husband taught in public school for 32 years before he retired, and then he helped the pastor start the school. So, and of course that's where we met, and then we kind of got disconnected there, and somehow God's brought us back together again. So,
which is exciting.
Yes.
Okay. To, I guess, jump into your book, because that'll help us to introduce your sons and their story. Again, your story, your book is called How to Train a Superhero, Story of Autism. I wish y'all could see this cover with Tommy and his superhero outfit on. He looks awesome.
Yes.
So I have to put a picture in like a link or something so you guys can definitely see it. And obviously I'll put a link so that you guys can purchase the book. And we'll talk about at the end of this interview how people can actually do that. But I want to know, I guess, what motivated you to write this book? I know there are a lot of people, myself included, I just need to write a book. I need to write a book. I need to write a book. And the years go by, and you never ever write that story, and you wish that you did.
Yes.
But you did.
Yes, I did.
So tell me, what was the motivation behind it to actually just go ahead and do it?
Yeah, I think God put that on my heart early in the years when Tommy was younger, because it seemed like every time we turn around there was something major or something hilarious story or something going on with him. And number one, I kept saying I want to be able to remember all this even when I'm older. But I was reminded too that when we share our testimony, it helps others, whether it's avoiding some of the same mistakes or just helping them and encouraging them to be able to, go through whatever storms they're going through and that kind of thing. And so I had started to make notes about stories, that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. Yeah. So, because one day I was going to put it in a book form.
Okay.
So I guess you might say it's been on my bucket list for a long time.
Okay.
But I knew I had a lot of things that, we were going to go through. And at whatever point in time, God said, now's the time is when we would do it. So, anyways, but about 3 or 4 years ago, I decided it was time to start writing. And the only time I ever wrote on the book was when I was away from home by myself, quiet time, nothing else, which, trust me, was very few times.
Okay, I was going to ask, how often was that?
That was not very many times.
Okay.
So I think someone was saying, how long did it take you to write that book? Well, if you count how many times I got away from home, it might have been 4 or 5 times in that 3 or 4 year period.
Wow.
For like 2 days at a time.
Wow.
And so, anyways, but sometime last year, God just said, it's time to get it done. Because, it was one of those things I really wasn't in a hurry to finish. Whenever it got finished is when it got finished.
Okay.
So, but I kept hearing him say, it's time. So I set a goal for myself to have it done by the end of the past, a year ago, December.
Okay.
That didn't happen quite that way. I did get away again. I think it was in that November, and I wrote some more on it, but I didn't quite get it finished. So I did go back in January. I told my husband, before anything else in this year starts, I'm finishing this book.
That's
because
right.
God said finish it.
Okay.
So I told him, I said, I'm going to my sister's because she worked during the daytime. I knew I'd have quiet time. And I said, I'm not coming back till I finish, and he said, was it something I said or what? And I'm like, no, I just have to finish this book.
Yes.
So I did, and I got it finished, and it's been amazing. I can tell you the stories of how God has just taken care of every little detail since that time. So it's been pretty exciting.
Okay. Well, that's motivation to any of us who have been sitting on that book idea. Even if it's taking you a little while, still do it. It is still possible to get it done, and somebody needs to hear your story.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about your sons. So you have 2 sons, Tommy and Jack.
Yep.
So what is it that we need to understand about your sons to understand your book?
Well, the biggest thing is Tommy's diagnosed with autism. Jack is diagnosed with Asperger's, which is a very high functioning. It's on the autism spectrum. Jack is capable of doing a lot of things. He went to college. Yeah. He has a college degree. He works part-time for Disney on top of what he and I do.
Yeah.
He actually bought himself a house. It's a fixer-upper, so he's not in it.
Okay.
Because he wants to pay for it as it goes along, so you know how long that's going to take.
Yes, but that's all right. He's not going to have any debt.
That's right. That's right. So, but it's just the path he's chosen right now, I guess, until he gets impatient and decides he wants to do it faster. And then Tommy is, he's my little party animal. He thinks life is one big party.
Okay.
He is obsessed with superheroes and Disney. He doesn't understand that his brother is his gravy train to Disney. And that if it weren't for that, he wouldn't be doing all he does. But he loves life. He loves celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, every holiday, and all of that. And I talk about that a little bit in my book, because some days when I'm just really tired and I'm just so over all that stuff and I don't want to do it anymore, I'm reminded that I created the little monster. So he is the one that basically, just wants to keep things as they are, because they're very repetitious. So once they get in the habit of doing something, they think it has to happen all the time. Every year we got to celebrate and do this and that. And so and he actually designed that costume that he's wearing on the cover of the book.
It is beautiful.
Well, one thing about Tommy is he's all about name brand and high-end stuff. And when you look at that costume, you'll know why, because that was the most expensive fabric in the store.
Wow.
And that's what he wanted. So it's like, okay, well, even at 50% off that fabric, that costume still cost me over $200 to make.
It's a beautiful costume.
It is a beautiful costume.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. But I think Jack especially can, pretty much live a normal life, get married, do all that stuff if he wants to. Tommy wants all of that. He knows and understands just enough to want what he sees everybody else have, like their own house, their car, their wife, all of that. And he constantly tells us these things all the time. But physically, he's capable of all those things, but emotionally, he's not. So if things stay the way they are now, he will probably always live with us. But God can change that. Yeah. So, and he may see fit to do that at some point in time. So I never put limits on that, because before Tommy was even diagnosed and he was on the children's mental health unit at Shands, they told me that he would, because he didn't understand, come here, sit down, nothing. He had just no understanding of anything. Had absolutely no language at all. I don't even think he copycatted 3 words at that time. Wow. But they told me I had to prepare, that we needed to go through a grieving process, because that was all he was ever going to be. And, and I'm just like, how can you say that? So that's a lot of time, a lot of growing, a lot of, intervention, whatever you want. But I never agreed with that. And the nurse used to make me mad every Sunday when we met, and she'd say that to me, and I was just like, she's not God. She doesn't know what God has planned for him.
Right.
So I didn't accept that. I didn't accept what they told me I needed to do at home either.
Okay.
And so I just went with, day to day, and just tried to teach him just like I would any other normal child.
Yeah.
And I expected, same things as I would if raising children. We want them to have manners, teach them manners, and be considerate of others, and all those things. And I expected that of my children too, whether they were handicapped or not. So, and every day was however it was. I needed to try to figure out how to teach them that. Then that's the way the day went.
So that's, you touched on a lot of the questions that I've already written down. So I guess we'll kind of circle back so that we can go into more detail for the people who don't know your backstory and who haven't read the book yet, so that they can understand a little bit better. So you mentioned that both of your sons are autistic, or just on different parts of the scale, if you will. So if I'm somebody and I don't know what autism is, can you explain to me in a simplistic term, what is autism? Well,
for me, autism, because when Tommy was on the children's mental health unit those 3 months, they didn't have a name for it. They hadn't, diagnosed him with that.
What year was that? So we can kind of.
I don't really know what year, but it was when he was 5. So and he's 32 now.
The 90s, early. So would that have been the 90s, late 90s, maybe.
It would have been late 90s, because he was born in '89. So yeah, it would have been. So around that time. Mid to late,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And back then, they don't know as much now, then as they did now. And, I feel like, and when I say that, I feel like I'm really old, because I know there's further back than that parents didn't get a diagnosis of autism, and they were. If you ever watched Temple Grandin, the movie.
You mentioned her
yes.
in the book,
yes.
but I never heard about her.
Well, she's amazing to me, and I'm so thankful that she shared her story, because my kids, I don't think, would have turned out the way they did if she hadn't shared her story in her books.
Okay.
Because it was a major turnaround for us in our parenting. We hadn't really got that far because he was only 5, but it was so different then. So it became more of, okay, what's causing the behavior? What can I do to figure out what could possibly be going on? And if she hadn't been sharing that in her books about how she perceived things and how they affected.
She's autistic as well.
Yes,
right?
She's autistic.
Okay.
And if you watch the movie, to me, it's amazing to watch her in the movie. And the girl that played her, I don't remember the actress's name, but she did an excellent job.
Wow. Okay.
And I remember her mom in the movie, she was told, it wasn't the same exact thing, because that time was further back from what they knew then.
Okay.
As like when we were getting diagnosed.
Okay.
Her time was further back.
Okay.
So it was even less known then than now.
Right.
And so that was the major thing, because even when I think about how her mom in the movie, how they were telling her, the professionals were saying, it was because she was a cold mom and, all this kind of stuff. That was way back in the ages when they were guessing at what all that was going on. And I realized today, thinking about it, coming down here today, her mom expected her to learn manners and do just like all the other kids, just like I did.
Right.
And look at where she is now. She's designed 1/3 of the nation's cattle handling equipment.
Wow.
And all the books she writes, and all the speaking. She goes around and speaks all the time. All of that, when they were telling her she wasn't going to get any better, or it wasn't going to change, And so I realized that whenever I was coming down here, I was like, hey, that's a lot like what we went through,
right?
And I can imagine what it was like for her, because of the fact that it was way back when they knew even less.
Right.
And even now, like I tell everybody, I'm an expert on my children.
Right.
I'm not an expert on on autism, because they're forever changing, things, and learning new things that they do for intervention and all of that. Here recently, I've been reading about this ABA therapy.
Okay.
And I was kind of curious about it, because there seemed to be a lot of controversy with it.
Okay. What is ABA therapy?
I think it's some kind of, what was it? I can't remember if the first A was for advanced or something, but it was behavioral therapy of some sort.
Okay.
But from what I understood, and little bits I was, and I, like I said, I know nothing about it, but I did read a couple of things, and I realized that I think they were using some shock therapy or something in there. And I'm thinking, because, on these autistic Facebook pages, I'm part of a couple of those here in Florida.
Okay.
And I read, a lot of parents are saying, yeah, they're all for it, and it's really helped their kid. And
wow.
And then there's others that are like, absolutely not.
Right.
And I'm thinking I would be on the absolutely not side if they're talking about shock behavior or anything like that.
Sounds like going back in the 60s and the 50s types of treatment.
It to me, you're talking about a human being, not an animal.
Absolutely.
And so that would concern me. I would, so like I said, we're beyond that. I wouldn't even, I'm just in a different stage with my boys. And so it's just, we're past that. It's more, because they're finding all kinds of stuff. And they still don't know what causes it or anything. But if you look at it, it's a pervasive developmental delay.
Okay.
And it usually affects their sensory function, and their communication is a big part of it.
Okay.
And you see autistic people all around, and you see how different it affects. I see some autistic people that are as fluent as they can be in language, but yet
there's an emotional disconnect sometimes. I've seen.
Yes,
Okay.
Social delays, sensory dysfunction, all those things, and it's all part of it.
Right.
And it's just however it's affecting you. So when the boys were diagnosed when they were younger,
your book said about 5 for Tommy and 7 for Jack.
Yeah, Jack wasn't diagnosed with Asperger's till 7,
Okay.
but with the autism, and when they sent us home from Children's Mental Health that time, I realized there was no fixing it.
Yeah.
So we had to deal with what was going on at hand, which is there was no language, he had a lot of sensory dysfunction, and a lot of behavior problems, which stemmed from mostly those other 2 areas. Because you can imagine how frustrating it is for a child when the world's telling you all these things, and if they don't understand it, or if their sensory system is reacting totally different and they're not able to respond what we consider normally, then
you're frustrated.
Yeah, and then you end up with all kinds of behaviors, and it's not an act of disobedience or because they want to be like that.
Right.
It's just that they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So it is hard, and it does affect everybody. But I try to just tell parents today. I can't tell you how important it is for early intervention.
Okay.
So the earlier that you can get a diagnosis, and because that was for us, that was it. We just wanted to know what we were up against. Somebody give us a name. What is going on?
Because I was reading your book, and you guys were going from doctor to doctor, therapist to therapist, just trying to get information.
Yeah.
And that the 90s is not that long ago. I know somebody who's much younger, like, oh, that's ages, the dark ages. As my kids say, well, Mom, you're so old. But that is not a long time.
It's not.
That's at best almost 20 years. That's not a lot of time. But just 20 years ago, they didn't have enough information just to tell you what your kids were dealing with.
Right.
So you guys were trying to figure out on your own.
Yeah, and we went through genetic testing. We went through they tested him for albinoism. Don't ask me why.
When I read that, I was like, oh, okay.
I don't even know where that came from. Because when I see albinoism, I'm thinking like really bleach, all of that.
Oh, Lord.
But where that was, I don't know. But at that time, maybe they were reaching for straws too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you just don't know, but yet you just want to get them the best help that you can, because to me, Tommy may never progress past where he is now, although I see him progressing all the time in his comprehension and everything. It's just a matter of what channel do you get it down so that he gets it.
Okay.
And it's not always the same. Well, for him, it's never been the same channel as what it seems to be for everybody else.
Okay.
So a lot of my trial and error was, how do I get this through to him so that he understands? And then, of course, I talk about in the book about how he taught me some things I was trying to teach him was before he was developmentally ready.
And that was one of the things that I noted in your 10 life lessons in chapter 4. That was one of the lessons that stood out to me the most. Because even with my children, I think of Maya in particular, when she wasn't ready to read, when she was in kindergarten, and I was like, but she's so smart, and she catches on to everything so fast. She should be able to do this, but it wasn't until something clicked in her mind for her to be ready to read. And when she was ready, you can't take a book out of her hand now. But I think that, especially in the public schools, or just in school in general, we're conditioned to believe that every child should reach these milestones at the same time. And as a parent, there's so much that we can read. We read this stuff, or we have friends who have children, and we're comparing, not even intentionally, but you just do it naturally. Where you're like, oh, well, my child's not here, or my child's not there, so you start second guessing what you do as a parent, and you start feeling bad, or you're pushing your child to go somewhere they're just not ready to go. So that's one of the lessons that you learn with time.
Yeah, because I'd push Tommy to frustration sometimes.
I'm sure I did the same thing with mine.
Well, and I think you and I remember a conversation you and I had
about
the fact, and you were upset. I remember that. Because, yes, and everything else that she was doing it, but these one couple little places, it just, I really felt like the whole time she's just not developmentally ready yet. But when it clicks, it clicks. And that's one thing with Tommy that just, it's amazing to me, because whenever we go back and revisit and the little light bulb goes on, I keep thinking, the light bulb doesn't always go on for just him, it's for mom too, because those are the moments that I go, oh, well, that was what the problem was, and I should have picked that up, but I just didn't, because I was so focused on what I thought he should be able to do, instead of just letting it, happen naturally for him. And that is, I think, for parents in general, all along. I mean, because like you said, we don't purposely compare our kids, but mentally we do.
We do.
And we think they should be doing what, this other person does. But even if you look at what we call normal children and their strengths and weaknesses, there's still things that they excel in way better than anybody else. And then you're looking at them going, well, my kids should be able to do that, and it's not always that cut and dry.
It's not. Even from child to child, having more than one child, and you see how something might come very easy for one of your children, and then your other child not so much, or they have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. So they teach you, and that's one of the things that I kept picking up from your book, is that your kids were your teacher, and I feel like my kids are my teacher.
Yeah, but I think, because I would catch myself in all the years of raising them, of times of me not listening.
Me too.
When they were telling me.
Me too. It's trial and error.
Yes, it is. And then just somewhere along the way, your little light bulb goes on, and you go, oh yeah, if I had just paid attention to that, he was telling me all along.
Yep.
So, and it is hard, but I tell everybody, I was so blessed to be a stay-at-home mom, because when you're not a stay-at-home mom, you miss so much. And so, like I say in the book, I could have never kept a job, probably because of all the appointments and everything, so I'm just glad I never had that, hanging over my head and stuff. And when you have a child that needs so much more, it just makes a big difference if you can be there and be on it, and just, because it took me a long time sometimes to learn some of the lessons. I didn't get them right away. So and if I had been working outside the home, I probably never would have picked up on some of it. So it's a lot, because I know families, especially the way the economy is and the way prices are on things, it's like you just have two incomes to make it anymore. So it's just a fine line, and you have to figure out what works, because I think about single moms, that are trying to raise children with special needs and stuff. I mean, they have no choice but to be working, and so when I think about all those things, I just feel so blessed that I was able to do that, and that my husband made a way for that to happen, because it was tough, and we still don't. Sometimes we look around and say, oh, I wish I had, a big house, and all that kind of stuff, but really, what good is it going to do? And the most important thing is that we raise our children to be contributing people in society, and that they can stand their ground and they can take care of themselves when they get older and you're gone.
Right.
And that's been a big burden for us, what's going to happen with Tommy if things are the way they are now, for him.
Yeah.
Because my biggest fear is higher achievers, it's just different, so we expect more, and I don't know, just in the whole process of it all, I just accepted, yes, that was my fault, it was one of those freak, farm accidents or whatever, and went on living my life and growing up and everything from that point, not really ever thinking about that too much. And I don't even think I necessarily was like having these guilty feelings all the time and all that. I never really thought about any of that. And there's 8 years between my sister and I, so it wasn't a few years after that I was gone.
Okay.
And so she was, younger, and so she was still at home and everything. So, so we never talked about it. It's just one of those things that got shoved under the rug, and nobody ever discussed it. And so when my kids came along and we were discovering their handicaps, somewhere in all of that, and I remember having just one thought about it, about the fact that was punishment for my sister's accident, for being responsible for that. And I guess that at that point, I just buried that in my subconscious mind, and I didn't even think about it, anymore, until we were sitting in Sunday school that one Sunday, and we were studying in John, chapter 9, I think it is, 1:9 or something. Can't remember, but anyway, it's the story about, because our Sunday school teacher was saying, well, we serve a perfect God, so, how is it that we have all these imperfect things, and why are people born with handicaps and, all that kind of stuff, things that we don't see as perfect. And that is a big question.
Yeah, it's a huge question.
Yeah, and I think parents, when you're going through that diagnosis in the early times, you are wondering, why is this happening? Why, God, are you allowing this? And, all that. And sometimes I'm sure a lot of parents go through a lot of anger, at God and stuff for those things. It just, I think, has to do more with your relationship, or if you have a relationship with God or whatever. And so anyways, but we started reading that chapter, and it was somebody that had asked Jesus, because they were talking about the blind man, and they asked Jesus, who sinned? Was it him, or was it his parents that he was born blind? And his response was, it was neither. It was that God's glory would be revealed through him, because through him healing the blind man, God was glorified.
That's right.
So it was because of that. So God had a purpose for that. And whenever we read that, I'm not kidding you, and people, because they probably put me in the crazy house for saying it, but I'm telling you, God spoke to me. It was so loud and clear in my spirit, it was almost like I could hear his voice saying it to me. But he basically told me that was why my kids were born the way they were. It wasn't because of the accident. It was because he was going to use them and be glorified through them. And so I'm telling you, floodgates of tears. Just, and it was a cleansing. For sure. Because you know how us girls are. When we get a good cry, we feel better.
Yes.
Well, this was the floodgates going.
Oh my God. Yes, I can imagine.
Because you can imagine after suppressing. And I didn't.
Years.
Yes, and I didn't even know I was suppressing all of that until that. Because as much as I kept trying to fight, there was no fighting back tears. It was just coming and coming and coming. And I was trying my best not out to be a blubbering idiot and draw attention to myself in Sunday school. I don't even know if anybody even did. But I remember, and I'm trying to be quiet and everything. I don't even know if my husband noticed or if he remembered doing it at the time. But anyways, and I couldn't get up and leave because that would have really drawn attention. Yeah. And then they'd be looking at me going, "Oh, she's crying and falling apart." But after that, when we went to church, he showed me. It was just so amazing. And it was for weeks afterwards, too. Everywhere we went, I was so keenly aware of what my kids were doing and how they were interacting with people. Now, we're talking about Tommy, who was like totally not sociable whatsoever and wanted away from people as far as he could get most times. But he had been growing him to the point that he was interacting with people, and he was going up to even strangers and stuff. And I remember one time when Jack was little, he was probably 8 or 9 maybe or something like that. We were down in Miami and we were in a hotel in the elevator, and he introduced me and his dad to this total stranger in the elevator, and I'm thinking, whose kid are you?
Oh, God. Wow.
But just the way he is, and if you see Jack, Jack, and how sweet spirit he has.
They both are.
Yeah, and they affect people everywhere they go. They influence, and I see it all the time. I see how Jack uses his Facebook and just everything else, and it's just like, yeah, he's using them.
That's right.
He really is using them.
That is the truth.
Right where they're at.
He brought so much joy. Just being himself.
Yes.
And seeing his costumes and coloring some picture or watching little videos on the computer.
Yeah, getting birthday card. If you knew when your birthday was, you're going to get, and that's the way it is now. You're going to get a text, a phone call, something in the mail if he can get his mom to the mailbox in time to get it there, and just all kinds of stuff. But he is his own. Like, we go in the gym sometimes. This was, we had a gym membership. We don't have it right now, but he would go in the gym, I'd be going too, because I went with him. He couldn't go without me, and he'd go up there to scan his little card to go in, and everybody's like, "Hey, Tommy, how you doing?" or whatever. Nobody in the gym knew the heck. They didn't realize his mother, much less know who I was.
But they knew him.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes, and he'd go out there, and those trainers, be out there on the line, and he'd be there, and they'd be talking up a storm with him and everything, and I'm just like, what am I, chopped liver? But he has his own connection with people, and he makes his own. If you look at him, he's his own fashion statement. It just blows my mind sometimes. But he's a joy to watch. Everybody loves to watch him, and they never know what's going to come next.
Yes.
And it just makes their day. So, and I used to worry about this and that and the other, but I'm like, you know what? God's got this. He's used them for however he wants them to do.
That's right.
So.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending time talking with me today. I think that this is going to inspire a lot of parents.
I hope it does.
Because we need to encourage each other.
Yes.
I think socially as a society, we don't talk anymore like we used to. We don't have conversations, especially about tough topics, for whatever reasons. But I think there's so much power in sharing our stories. There's so much power in being vulnerable. There's so much power in just being open and honest with each other, because I think that's how we grow together. It's comforting to know that I'm not by myself.
Yes.
There's somebody else who is experiencing or has gone through what I'm going through, and they've made it to the other side. So that means I can do it too. And it's a continual journey, and that's with anybody raising kids, even grown children, where now they're having to make their own decisions, and you're trying to support them in that process. And some of the decisions aren't the best decisions, but you still have to love them through it. So I think that just hearing your story, especially when they go out and purchase the book.
Yes, I hope they will.
And they read the book, How to Train a Superhero Story of Autism, that they will just get so many nuggets. Because I did. I got so many nuggets when I was reading. My book is definitely There's a bunch of stuff written in the margins because I'm the teacher, and that's how I learn. That's how I process.
Yeah.
But it was some good stuff that I can apply with my own children. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you
so much. I really appreciate
you having me. It's exciting. I'm just anxious to see what God has, because I've said all along the way, God is taking care of every little detail, that this is His book. And whatever doors He opens, because, like, trust me, whenever I first started talking about getting the book published, my friend was saying, oh, you're going to be famous, you're going to get all these interviews on TV and radios, and you're going to get speaking engagements and all this. And I literally freaked out because I was like, whoa, wait just a minute, because that was like out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I can't do that. And she goes, yes, you can.
That's
I'm
right.
like, no, I can't. And she's like, yes, you can.
Yes.
And it took a couple of weeks after that, because I was like, what am I going to do? Because that probably is going to come along with the book getting published, and I don't know that I can do that. But God was slowly getting me ready and used to the idea.
That's right.
And He's opening doors. He really is opening doors. So I've just decided, whatever He opens, we're going to walk through.
There you go. There you go. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know it's going to bless a lot of people.
Thank
I
you.
really believe that.
I'm hoping and praying that that's what the intention was. So
Absolutely.
that's what we wanted to do.
Well, that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's continue the conversation at theeducationenthusiast.com and via Instagram and Facebook at The Education Enthusiast.